What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode. Hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and share the video. Hit the join button and become a member. Why? Well, members get exclusive content. Hit the bell icon on my channel so that you'll receive a notification every time that I drop a video, and you can go and check the video out. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so. Let's get right into it. Fred Hampton. Who was Fred Hampton? Fred Hampton was the chairman of the Black Panther Party. Soon I'll do his life story. And here I'm just going to react to his unaliving. His unaliving was a government-sanctioned execution. J. Edgar Hoover and others, the others in government, they despised Fred Hampton. He was very young, but very smart and very articulate, and was a co-leader in the Black Panther Party. They hated him. And so they ordered his execution, the government. And while Fred Hampton, Chairman Fred, was lying in his bed asleep next to his wife and child, the police kicked in the door and gunned him down while he was asleep. They were carrying his body out laughing while they had his body. There are pictures of this. It was a government-sanctioned execution on brother Fred Hampton because they hated him. Again, chairman and leader of the Black Panther Party, one of the leaders of the Black Panther Party. Let's get into
it. December 4th, 1969. Akua Njeri was 19 years old and sleeping next to her fiancé, the Illinois Black Panther Party chairman, Fred Hampton.
The next thing I remember was someone in our room shaking Chairman Fred. Chairman, wake up, wake up. Plaster was flying off the wall. You could smell the cordite from the gunshot. If you've ever been under gunfire, 5 minutes is 5 hours. To you, it seems like forever. The shooting started back again. Then another voice unfamiliar to me said, "He's good and dead now." I knew they were talking about Chairman Fred.
Fred Hampton was murdered by his government. But before that, he was a leader in a movement practicing a new kind of activism. A movement targeted because of its power to unite people.
Marking 1964 as a historic year in race relations, on July 2nd, President Johnson signed into law the Civil Rights Act. It was the strongest...
In the 1960s, racial progress in the U.S. was at a turning point. Activists won major civil rights victories, and the era of Jim Crow laws came to an end. But at the end of the decade, there were still deep social and economic gaps for Black people across the country. Black Americans continued to face high poverty, poor housing, and unemployment, and they still had little to no political representation. These disparities and an increase in brutal police violence led to uprisings across the country. Many young Black activists grew frustrated that the changes they'd hoped for hadn't come.
It's just the opposite of being a white man. That's about the best I can abbreviate that for you.
After the police killing of an unarmed Black teen in San Francisco, two activists in Oakland, California, Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, founded what was initially called the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. Newton had studied law and knew it was legal to carry arms in California as long as they were not concealed. The Panthers began to patrol their communities. As the movement grew, several highly publicized confrontations with police would bring about mainstream awareness of the Black Panther Party. The allegations in these confrontations were serious, but the public accounts of them were typically one-sided and shaped largely by police. Media coverage depicted party members as a caricature of Black militancy.
The Black Panther Party was portrayed as a marauding gang. They say their goal was to kill all the white people.
In reality, the Panthers did call for radical change.
What they were hoping for was a revolution to overthrow the capitalist enterprise.
But what they called revolution might not actually sound so radical today.
Focused on socialism as a way of solving economic needs. They looked to places like Canada, which always had a democratic political system, but the economic system has always been socialism. So they want a democratic socialist country here in the United States, which they saw as a more equitable, more humane system.
They released a 10-point plan for broad social reform that called for an end to police brutality and for Black employment, housing, education, and freedom from prison and jails. Chapters began forming across the country. They started to implement social programs, which they called survival programs.
The Panthers would say, put that theory into practice. If you really want to change minds, and you really want to meet the people where they are, you have to give them the services which they need.
The programs included food and clothing drives, free health clinics, and sickle cell disease testing, and were funded largely by volunteers and donations from businesses. One of their biggest programs was a free breakfast for children initiative.
Here we are living in 1966, 67, is the most wealthy nation in the world, and kids were going to school hungry, especially in African-American communities. So one of the first community service programs were free breakfast for school children.
And all the children had to do was come.
It was during this time that Akua and Jerry, then known as Deborah Johnson, met Fred Hampton.
I was a student at Rice City College, and Chairman Fred had come up to the school to speak, and he said, in the breakfast program, we feed over 3,000 children a week. We're serious about making power to the people of reality. We're not just sitting up here jaw-jabbing and talking shit, We about work. And I said, damn, we serious about this business.
Fred Hampton grew up in Maywood, Illinois, just west of downtown Chicago. He became president of his local NAACP Youth Council in 1967, at 19 years old. Shortly after, he was recruited by a founder of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party.
That you can jail a revolutionary, but you can't jail a revolution. Right.
Because of his charismatic skills, he quickly rise to the top of the crop.
Here he is at age 21, building and leading the Illinois chapter Black Panther Party.
Soon after they met, and Jerry and Hampton became a couple.
Anybody that has met him or heard him speak, they say he wasn't bullshit. He was for real.
You have to understand, the people have to pay the price for people. If your dad struggle, your dad win. If your dad not struggle, then goddamn it, you don't deserve to win. Let me say peace to you if you're willing to fight for it.
Great content needs a great audience, like Santa Claus needs cookies.
What? No cookies for...
Chicago in particular was a place where the party's ideals especially resonated. It was then the second largest American city, and due to decades of discriminatory policies, also one of the most segregated. Chicago's mayor at the time, Richard J. Daley, opposed neighborhood integration. And in the 1950s, the city had begun to redevelop certain neighborhoods, pushing low-income residents out and into densely packed, high-rise public housing in already overcrowded neighborhoods. Black people were pushed primarily to the south and west side of Chicago. A large Puerto Rican population was here in Lincoln Park, and poor white people were concentrated here in Uptown. These groups all faced similar problems.
They all had dilapidated schools, they all had dilapidated homes, they were all being drafted into Vietnam. Very few of those communities had health care.
In 1969, Hampton led the Panthers towards an unexpected alliance, a coalition of activists working across racial lines against a corrupt city government that threatened their communities.
We gonna fight racism, not racism, but we gonna fight for solidarity.
What they had in common was their poverty. So they was building a revolution based on class solidarity that transcends race, that they all had the same hell to pay.
Hampton named the group the Rainbow Coalition. It included the Black Panthers, a Puerto Rican group called the Young Lords, and a group called the Young Patriots, made up of largely poor white migrants from Appalachia who had moved to Chicago seeking economic opportunity.
We don't hate the motherfucking white people, we hate the oppressor, whether he be white, black, brown, or yellow. So we got to know that.
I don't mean sing Kumbaya and make a quilt. I'm talking about bringing them together on common things they could unite on. Not everything, but who could say that children do not deserve to have a healthy meal?
We work with anybody, form coalition with anybody that has revolution on their mind. We're not a racist organization because we understand that racism is an excuse used for capitalism.
Hampton and other Panthers helped the Young Lords and Young Patriots launch their own social programs. They organized protests together. And it was working. Members were traveling across the country to organize Rainbow Coalition chapters.
Particularly where Black Panther chapters were, but also in these rural white communities as well, to bring the revolution to bear. This blows people's minds. These people are not supposed to get along, but here they are operating as brothers of the struggles, as revolutionaries against the capitalist structure. And that was the threat to the state at the local level, but also at the national level.
In 1968, the FBI had sent around this internal memo. It outlined goals to prevent the coalition of militant Black nationalist groups and prevent the rise of a messiah who could unify and electrify the militant Black nationalist movement. It wasn't written about Hampton specifically, but by 1969...
Yeah, so that's a whole deep story. That's the COINTELPRO and this and that. So the FBI had written that memo saying, J. Edgar Hoover really sponsored it, saying to prevent the rise of a Black messiah. So any Black leader that was coming up in ranks at that juncture was under threat of death because they did not want a Black messiah. That's why they had just taken out Malcolm X in 65, Martin Luther King in 68, and now Hampton in 69. He was 21 years old. 21 years old when they brutally unalived him, sanctioned by the government to prevent a Black messiah that can electrify the Black masses.
Chairman Fred Hampton was the one that fit the bill.
The revolution was in the air. And the ways in which the Panthers was able to transcend those racial lines, especially their charismatic leadership of one like Fred Hampton, they saw him as a greater threat even than Martin Luther King or Malcolm X ever was.
In one FBI memo about the Black Panthers' breakfast program, they claimed their real purpose was to poison minds with anti-white propaganda and indoctrinate youngsters in hate and violence.
The FBI, under the leadership of J. Edgar Hoover, had deemed the Black Panther Party as the #1 threat to the internal security of this country.
The FBI operated a counterintelligence program called COINTELPRO. It was a program that targeted dissident political groups in the U.S. Their methods typically went outside the law.
They were using tactics such as assassination, discrediting false narratives. They were falsely putting people in prison and exile, which were all illegal.
Several Black Panthers were killed or imprisoned, including the party co-founders. In Chicago, the party was also targeted by Mayor Daley and the Chicago police.
Our office was burned down at least 3 times. People would disappear, you never see their bodies again.
Before you go to bed, night say I am a revolutionary. Make that the last word. In case you don't wake up, then somebody might believe it, you might, end up in what they call it, revolutionary happy hunting grounds.
Hampton, a rising star at just 21 years old, knew he was a target too. He'd been arrested in 1968 for allegedly robbing an ice cream truck and handing out $71 of ice cream. In 1969, he was sentenced to 2 to 5 years in prison. He appealed and was released on bond, but lost the appeal. He'd have to return to prison by December 6th.
Big news for Mahomes.
I'm switching to iPhone 16, but T-Mobile. It's built for Apple Intelligence.
That's like peanut butter on jelly on go. Get 4 iPhone 16s on us. Plus 4 lines for $25. What a deal. Y'all giving it away too fast, T-Mobile. Slow down.
you'll get better. When you're not blamed.
On December 4th, around 4 a.m., 14 Chicago police officers arrived outside Hampton's apartment on Chicago's west side. Inside, Hampton and Jerry and 7 other Panthers were asleep.
I was very pregnant, and the first thing I remember was Chairman Fred had fell asleep while talking on the phone. The next thing I remember was someone in our room
started shaking the chair.
Said, Chairman, wake up, the pigs are vamping. And I'm seeing Chairman Fred look up, and then he laid his head back down real slow.
Officers kicked open the door and shot Mark Clark, a visitor from another party chapter. They shot a sleeping 18-year-old named Brenda Harris. Then they shot in the direction of Hampton's bed.
The mattress is just going, you can feel the bullets going into it.
I had moved over on top of Chairman Fred because there was shooting into our mattress. The person that had come into the room kept shouting, stop shooting, we have a pregnant sister in here. Eventually, the shooting stopped.
And Jerry was forced into the kitchen when she heard another voice.
Someone said he's barely alive.
He'll barely make it. I assume they were talking about Chairman Fred. Pig said, he's good and dead now.
As they took me out and jammed a revolver to my stomach as I was handcuffed behind my back, I didn't look towards our bedroom because I didn't know what I would see or how I would respond.
The police fired nearly 100 shots. Fred Hampton and Mark Clark were dead. The 7 surviving Panthers were arrested, and police smiled as they removed Hampton's body.
See? Look at these sick devils, man. They're sick. I don't give a fuck what nobody says. I don't care. Keep it to yourself. They're sick. The government ordered that this man be brutally unalived for no other reason than he was around the world organizing a coalition for freedom. He was even organizing, as you can see, with other races, including white people. Because he said it's not about racism, it's about classism. It's about the fact that we are poor. It's about capitalism. And they wanted to prevent a black messiah. You saw the report. This is an FBI report saying to prevent a black messiah, do what you must do. And then eventually they ordered the brutal unaliving of Chairman Fred Hampton, a 21-year-old black man who was just organizing for freedom of all races. And they went to his home and he knew he was about to die. Because when his wife was right there telling him, get up, Chairman Fred, they right there. She said he lifted up his head and just slowly put his head back down. So as if to say, I'm not even finna fight. I mean, I'm not even, what can I do? I can't even fight. I know what they're here for. They're here to kill me. I know why they're here. And there's nothing that I can do. She said he lifted up his head and just put his head back down slowly, like, it's over. And then they gunned him down, put the gun to her stomach. And then now look, they're carrying his body out. Look at the smile on their faces, all of them. Sick. Sick. Sick.
From the scene. The Chicago police and the state's attorney's office quickly shaped the narrative to call it a gunfight, a battle, and a shootout.
Officers involved in the...
Sound familiar? This is what the police do. They lie. They do shit like this and then lie about it. A gun battle, a shootout. The man was in there asleep. No one other than the police, we later found out, fired a shot. No one. It wasn't a gun battle. It was a massacre.
Ray testified that they were fired on from 4 different rooms in the apartment by shotgun.
Before I could get past the threshold, there were 3 shots fired from the rear bedroom.
They played back a story that you could not even fathom. They gave a fictional account of what happened. Again, vilifying the Black Panther Party.
I mean, you were firing at police.
Yes, sir. We saw the shots coming out of the 2 bedrooms.
This attack by the Black Panthers on the police clearly demonstrates the true character of the Black Panther Party.
But experts and lawyers hired by the Panthers, along with other journalists, inspected the crime scene. The Panthers even opened the apartment so that anyone could examine it. And a drastically different picture emerged. It was clear that the police had fired unprovoked. Of the nearly 100 shots fired, only one possible shot could have come from a Panther's gun, likely from Mark Clark at the front door. The bullet holes that the police said came from Black Panthers were nail heads. Later, it also emerged that the FBI had assisted Chicago police with the raid. The FBI had an informant within the Black Panther Party named William O'Neill, who had become chief of security and Hampton's bodyguard. O'Neill had provided the FBI with a hand-drawn floor plan of the apartment, which the FBI then gave to Chicago police. And evidence strongly suggests that before the raid, O'Neill had drugged Hampton. In the years after Hampton's assassination, the police and the FBI continued to imprison dozens of party members across the country. The official Black Panther Party would continue to exist until 1982, but membership decreased dramatically, and it would never be the same.
And I hope that each one of you will be able to die in the election for revolutionary struggle, even in people living. And I think that struggle is going to come. Why don't you live for the people? Why don't you struggle for the people? Why don't you die for the people?
Fred Hampton wanted revolution. Those in power wanted to destroy him and what he stood for. But they weren't totally successful.
Chairman Fred lives. You know what I'm saying? Through the military assault, through the destruction of the party as an organization itself, you know, by the state, the legacy of the party is still here.
Today, the work of Fred Hampton is alive through some of the same programs that marked him as a threat.
Many of the programs that the Panthers created are now staples of our society. We didn't have free breakfast in schools prior to the Black Panther Party's free breakfast program. Those free clinics, almost every major college campus got a free legal aid clinic. The ways in which sickle cell testing is now respected as a disease by the CDC and others. None of that stuff existed before the party. I think that's revolutionary.
The history of the Black Panther Party is going toe-to-toe with this government will never die. Never die.
Okay, there y'all have it, man. As I said, I'm going to do a video myself on Fred Hampton, on Huey P. Newton, Bobby Seale, Edward Cleaver, so forth. Malcolm X as well. Talk about their life and time. Go inside the story of their lives. Tell the story in my own words and in my own way. But that's just to give you a brief synopsis of what Fred Hampton went through and what his life was all about. That just summarized it there. He was a chairman, 21 years old in 1969. He was due to go to jail on December 6th, 2 days before he can get to jail. They brutally unalived him, put a hit out on him. The government did, the FBI did. As you can see, the FBI was part of the cover-up. They sent the police. Yes, the black dude apparently was the informant. He should have been brutally unalived as well. I'm about to get into the story of Emmett Till, and Carolyn Bryant, the white woman who accused him of whistling at her only to find out that she was lying. She should have been brutally unalived. She should have never lived out her life. Just like Emmett Till didn't live out his, she shouldn't have lived out hers. I said what the fuck I said, man. I'll be back. In the meantime, stay free, people.